Hello everybody and welcome to part 3 of the recovery of precious metals from 20 kilograms of e-waste. Right, I think I'll jump straight in on this one. In this beaker we've got the copper nitrate from the nitric acid boils of the DIP chips. So I've got a heat sink here. I'm just going to drop this inside and we'll see if any silver precipitates. I'll set this to the back and then we'll have a look at them pins. Looking at it, it already looks as if there's a bit of silver starting to cement out on that copper heating. Lovely. Put this back here. Let's take a look at these. Right, these pins have been running through this copper cell for around about 2 weeks off and on. I've been turning it off overnight. I don't like leaving it running overnight, even though it was fused. I just don't like the risk of running the electricity through the night. So I'll get these into a beaker, get everything rinsed off, and then we'll get some nitric acid in there and see if we can dissolve any remaining base metals, which hopefully should leave us with some gold foil. Fingers crossed. It's important as well to filter the electrolyte, just in case any small particles of gold have made it through the filter and into the solution. I'll get this filtered off, get that filter in the beaker with the pins, and then we'll get some nitric on it. So while the electrolyte is filtering, I'm going to have a look at these tailings from the DIP chips. I'm hoping that there's not a lot of gold in there. I'm hoping I haven't missed anything, but we'll soon find out. I'll put about 100 ml of hydrochloric acid in there, and I'll throw a bit of potassium nitrate in there, and I'll leave it on the heat for an hour and see if anything dissolves. So this has been on the heat now for around about 30 minutes, and this is as exciting as it's got. There's no vigorous reaction, just a small reaction going on in the center, very little nitrogen dioxide. I'm going to say that there's not a lot of gold in there. I've done a quick stannous chloride test and it showed for a faint amount of gold. So I'll let this sit for another 30 minutes and I'll filter it off and see what we get. Right, so I've opted to suction filter this material. I want to pull as much of that liquid out as I possibly can. And after being on the heat for another 30 minutes, I did another stannous chloride test and it hadn't changed at all. It's still very light in colour, very faint showing of gold. For the rinsing, I'm not going to use water this time. I'm going to use some hydrochloric acid to rinse it through, just so as I don't over dilute the solution. With the precipitation, I'm using ferrous sulfate, and as you can see, there is a little bit of gold in there. Not the best reaction I've ever had, but there's definitely something there. I'll let that settle and I'll get it cleaned and weighed for you. Right, moment of truth. Here's the good stuff. Now this gold, it actually came out really dirty. I didn't even bother wasting any more hydrochloric acid on it, cleaning it up. There's not a lot there. I don't even think it'll move the scale. And it didn't. Oh well. It's good though. That means that all of the gold was collected in the panning process, minus that little tiny bit there. And it also shows that there's actually not a lot of gold in them DIP chips. So in the future, I think I'll just throw them in with my normal OC chips. Okay, back to the pins. For this, I'll be using some dilute nitric acid. I've made this up to, I think it's around about 35%. I'm just going to add it in small increments. This copper material so fine, if I added it all in one go, it'd take off like a rocket. I haven't even got to use any heat at the moment. I'll let this sit for around about 10 minutes until the reaction subsides, and then I'll add some more. The reaction's calmed down, there's no more nitrogen dioxide, so let's throw some more nitric in there. Still not adding any heat. It's actually generating its own heat. But I'll just keep doing these small additions until all of that nitric's used. So while the pins are having their little bath in the nitric acid, I've decided to incinerate the IC chips. These are the ones with the legs, not the BGA ones. These are the 450 grams of ICs. They've crumbled really nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these crushed, and I'll do a nitric wash on them, and then I'll pan the material, and I'll get back to you when I'm at the panning stage. I've done a couple of test pans of this material. I'm only doing it a teaspoon at a time, but it's actually panning really nice. Just need to make sure that when you're panning it that there's no gold falling down with the black material, but the gold bond wires from these ICs are really short. They're not wrapping up in the black material like they were with the gold corner BGAs. And there's also none of that silvery grey material that was on the DIP chips. So this is actually panning really nice. Let me know in the comments whether you prefer this way of dealing with ICs, or whether you would just throw them straight into a jug with some aqua regia. Me personally, I actually prefer doing this. Keeps me quiet for an afternoon. Find it very therapeutic. I'll just wash this back, and then I'll show you what you get in a teaspoon. With a couple of taps. The tapping helps to move the gold forward in the pan. And there it is. You can see the gold bond wires, how short they are. Like little micro hairs. But bunch them all together and you get a nice little golden smile. And then just suck it all up with your snuffer bottle. So in this beaker I've got the concentrates from the IC chips that I just panned. I'll get this on some heat with a bit of aqua regia. And in this jug, this is the nitric acid boils that I did on the IC chips. There might be a bit of silver in there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the copper nitrate from the DIP chips and see what we can cement out of both of the solutions. Just do it in one go. Normally I wouldn't do this, I'd just throw it all in the stock pot. But I'm quite curious to see how much silver's actually in there. And here I have the nitric acid from the pins. This is not filtering. I've got a feeling there's some metastanic acid in there, which is caused by tin reacting with the nitric acid. I'll leave that to one side. I might have to deal with that later. I didn't remove the solder from the pins before I started the process, so I've got a real good feeling that it is tin. But anyway, I'm adding around about 50-75 mils of hydrochloric acid and some potassium nitrate. I'll get that gold dissolved and then we'll drop it out and see what we get. Okay, once again, ferrous sulfate for the precipitation. Just pour that in there. Now you might have noticed that the solution was really cloudy before I poured in the ferrous sulfate. I did filter it 3 times, would not clear up. That's not a problem. All of this gold is going to get re-refined at the end anyway. And if we have a look over the top, you'll see there's some gold floating on the surface. That's always a good sign. Again, I'll let that settle and then we'll get it weighed out. Okie doke, let's get a weight. So what we got here, 37.1. Just double check actually. Yep, 37.1. Here's our new gold. Pour that in there. And now we've got 37.6. Half a gram, not too bad. You can see that. A quick double check, I think. Yep, half a gram definitely. Lovely. Right, let's have a look at where we're at. This is the liquid finally pulled through from the pins. And here's what I'm actually left to deal with. There's a lot of junk in there. I'm going to have to incinerate all these filters. It took about 4 filters to get that stuff through. Silver cementing out. I'd probably say there's about half a gram to a gram there. Free silver. I would have normally just thrown in the stock pot. Next up to do, I think, will be these BGAs. They've been sitting in hydrochloric acid for a while now, getting all the tin dissolved. These are the tailings from the IC chips. I can see tiny little specks of gold in there, not a lot. I'll save them for when I do the BGAs. And then I've got this mixed material still to sort through. I'm ready for the next video, I think. There's loads of transistors, ICs, tantalum capacitors. So lots of stuff to sort through, really. I'll save that for the next video. If you want to be notified when the next video is available, make sure you're subscribed. And I'll see you in the next video.